We have championship weekend to talk about here, Jake. Obviously, much fewer games and players than we're used to talking about. So we're going to go position by position, but we are going to just talk about a few names that you prefer. And let's get
Yeah.
start with quarterback. So I think one of the interesting
And
parts about this is we can go all the way to the top for Patrick Mahomes at 7,600, or we can go all the way to the bottom at 5,300 for Brock Purdy. And the way that these games shape up, we do have San Francisco at Philly the Sunday morning / afternoon game. And then the late night hammer is this Bengals and Chiefs game. So how are you approaching the quarterback position in this really wide range of prices we have?
Yeah, I'm not going to either extremities here. I think that this shoe kind of dropped some Purdy against the Eagles defense. And, Purdy had not even that great of a fantasy game. Obviously, last week was not that great. But, for as much as he's doing to help the team still win, quote unquote, I'm not going there. Not DFS, not in this situation. I'm not going to Mahomes. I know he's practicing in full, quote unquote, whatever that is on this ankle. But we already know how the Bengals play Mahomes. And the interesting thing here is that one of the metrics that was put out by Aaron Reese of The Athletic, he said that when teams drop 8 in coverage, Mahomes is third out of 34 quarterbacks at exploiting that EPA. Amazing against it. The Bengals did it once, a decent amount in the game, and then they stopped after that game. And if you see recently of their success, they're winning games against Patrick Mahomes. They're not using that formation. They're adding a little additional pressure. And the biggest thing here is, why would they change their stripes? Bengals, why would you change stripes? Why would you do that against Mahomes, who's also probably going to be limited in his mobility? Mm-hmm. So I am going back. I should have gave permission for Hurts last week. I wasn't sure how healthy his injury was, but he's back. So it's basically Hurts or Burrow for me. I lean a little bit because of the savings to wait for that late game and Burrow, just because you get 400 and then you get the late swap opportunity. Mm-hmm. But you know me, if I can find a way to go Hurts, I'm going to find a way to go Hurts.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Hurts is the guy that's going to be the highest own of this group, kind of right in the middle there, but basically the highest ceiling, I think, by a pretty large margin, with Mahomes kind of on the mend a little bit. So I'm with you. I think that Hurts in game number 1 is probably my priority. And if I was to kind of just go from a value perspective, I think you can still make an argument for Joe Burrow at 6,800. So I think we're completely in lockstep here. Let's talk about a position that's a little bit more interesting. So running back, obviously, we can pay all the way up for Christian McCaffrey. He's only 8K. Yeah. And then it's a massive drop off from a salary perspective to Joe Mixon and Jerick McKinnon. I think that CMC and Joe Mixon are still going to be by far the highest owned. I guess, what do we think about those two guys at the top, but also Jerick McKinnon after this kind of weekend where he burned a lot of people? I think at 5,400, people are still going to play this guy, but how are you approaching it?
I'm not actually touching McKinnon, interestingly enough, because of the injury. So I'm going to get to that in a second. But yes, if you can get McCaffrey as well, 100% in play. Not worried about the defense. Actually, the Eagles, for all these teams that are on the slate, have been a little bit more vulnerable to the run as of the second half of the season. But still, I mean, it's Christian McCaffrey, so I'm not too worried about that. My Hail Mary would be the Elijah Mitchell. Hopefully he gets a touchdown. Just hope for that. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about locks in this area, it's going to be Christian McCaffrey. I'm going to skip past Joe Mixon, because if you look at his game log, it's a lot of teens, like 13, 14. If you're going to tell me to spend 6,500 for a teen, I'm just not going to do it. The cost doesn't make sense. So obviously we want Joe Mixon to potentially get 2 touchdowns, but instead I'm going on the other side of that ball. And probably what's going to happen is the exact same thing as what we saw last week. All the rush attempts by Isaiah Pacheco, because of the offense with Mahomes being limited and being hurt, you're going to see more of him. And the biggest thing that happened to McKinnon, which I alluded to at the top here, is that the pass blocking situations came into play. And that's why McKinnon wasn't used as much. So that's why I'm leaning Pacheco in this one. My top 2 would actually be McCaffrey and Pacheco.
Interesting. I like that. Christian McCaffrey is number 1 in the Sims right now over at runthesims.com. 59.4% of the optimal lineups on this 2-game slate do have Christian McCaffrey in them. A lot of Bengals here at the top as well. Travis Kelce. We'll get to all of these guys in a second, Jake. But is there anyone else, I guess, that's a little bit under the radar? I think that Pacheco is kind of a nice call, though, because he's probably sitting at about maybe 25%, maybe a little bit more as this week goes on. You mentioned Elijah Mitchell. He's probably your other kind of dart throw, huh?
The other one, and if you want to go a little bit deeper, Samaje Perine, just in the fact, like, if, Mahomes' ankle's so bad that maybe the Chiefs don't even get into this game, and then you get Perine mixed in a decent more, or, I mean, Perine could go either way. You could get a high passing volume, which the Bengals kind of mix him in more with, and then hopefully get a garbage touchdown. He's in the Elijah Mitchell conversation. Or they start running away with this, and they're like, let's save Joe Mixon for the Super Bowl. And you get so Mitchell and Pirine. I don't want to touch. Watch one. Somebody's going to score for the Eagles and it's going to annoy everybody. But I do not want to touch any of the Eagles against that 49ers run defense.
Fair enough. One guy I'm definitely not scared to touch at the wide receiver position is going to be Jamar Chase. It's actually one of my favorite prize picks early in the week as well. You can get over 84.5 receiving yards. I have it significantly higher in my kind of aggregate projection, so that's one of the ones that I really like early in the week. He is one of the most expensive on the entire slate. AJ Brown 600 cheaper, so Jamar Chase is at the top as the most expensive wide receiver. But what are we doing here? Because I think from a value perspective, Jamar Chase still looks pretty good. I think he's going to be 50+% owned. Debo 5,700. You save almost $2K to get down to him. But what are you thinking about like the top end of wide receiver on this slate?
It's always Jamar Chase when possible. You saw, and I think I tagged you on it when the snow report came last week, and I said, "Ooh, that makes me." We talked T. Higgins, and then I said at the time of the recording we were talking snow. I said, "Come off T. Higgins for that weather." Jamar Chase is still in play because Jamar Chase is intermediate in the air yards per route run and all that type of stuff, but he's just good, short or long. Like he's going to make his day here. So I am going to have Jamar Chase in a lot of lineups. I'm going back to somebody. I saved his name. I didn't mention him, but if you remember last week, I said slot receiver Saturday. The other one who had a big day actually was over 20% of this team target share was Kadarius Toney. Mm-hmm. And that's what that target share with Patrick Mahomes being limited, probably going to play a lot from the pocket and pass when he needs to. Toney, if you're going for this game, down at 3,700, you're going to have to find somebody cheap. Toney's the one I would play. The 49ers worry me a little bit. I'm okay with Debo because he gets the touches out of the backfield. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that Aaron Reese had in his piece there is of all the teams in the NFL, the in routes run against the Eagles, they are top in the league and not allowing yards after the catch.
Interesting.
They dominate in routes. And that's why you saw like throughout the late times of the season, like while Daniel Jones struggled outside of Richie James was a lot of caught and done. So they do allow the in routes, and that's why slot receivers have their day against them, which is, again, why I'm kind of okay with Debo. But once they catch the ball, there's not a lot after the catch.
Is this one of those situations, Jake? We always talk about how, like, it can be a bad match. So these cornerback wide receiver things, like, have you ever talk about it being a bad matchup because it's a really good wide receiver against a really good cornerback? Is there anything to that? Because obviously, like, the San Francisco team is built for yards after the catch, so it's a little bit of a tougher scenario for Philly, right? Is there any validity to that?
There is, and that's why I'm okay with Debo, because as mentioned last week, the outside corners for the Eagles, like you and I talked about this all year. There's a degree to weighing I'm trying to decide between these two wide receivers. I'll avoid the tougher matchup. But you and I talk about all year long, like, don't overrate wide receiver versus corner matchups too much. But the Eagles have two, and the Eagles can shut down completely Brandon Ayuk. Now watch Brandon Ayuk on a 40-yard pass for a touchdown. But that being said, there is validity to that, and to kind of touch. I know we're not talking tight ends, but that's why I'm kind of off of Kittle on this one. Okay. They've really been good against the tight end position. So I'm worried about Kittle. I'm worried about Ayuk, but I'm okay with Debo. And then on the flip side of this game, I've mentioned this to you a couple times throughout the year too. The 49ers pass defense is great. But when they do give up plays, a lot of times it's a 20-yard, 30-yard chunk play. So I think that, like, if you're looking for that, Devonta Smith or A.J. Brown are in play. There's not really a big savings there. And I think a lot of people – this will be ownership. If a lot of people are playing recency bias of what just happened with Devonta Smith, I will go A.J. Brown. If it's still low on Devonta Smith, I'll probably stick with him.
I think both those guys are still going to be close to 40%. And I think that even though AJ Brown, like, kind of, there might be a little bit of flop lag there, I think that he'll still be, he's an easier guy to click than Devonta for whatever reason. So that's interesting. I love that you're making me feel better about Debo, though, because that was the other prize pick I was going to bring up. 49.5 receiving yards, have the over on that already. That's one of the ones that once this video comes out, I would go check it to make sure that it's still similar. If you do want to kind of tail us on that, code Holka, link in the description. Make sure you guys take advantage of that. PrizePicks also has another promo going on, which I'll throw on the screen right now. It's one of those free squares that we definitely always want to kind of take advantage of. So make sure you guys grab that. If Joe Burrow throws one passing yard this weekend, you win. So pretty easy. Again, code Holka, link in the description. Take advantage of that. 30 plus states is available now, but do like the Debo one quite a bit. Anything else at wide receiver really kind of pique your interest, Jake? I think on the cheaper side of things, we mentioned a couple of these guys. Kadarius Toney at 3,700 is going to make a lot work, though. So I'm definitely interested in that with trying to get the ball into his hands when maybe a little bit less mobility. Tyler Boyd all the way down to 3,800, MBS 3,600. Anything else on those, like, kind of super cheap wide receivers?
Not the super. I mean, MVS, you could hope for the big play. You know how it is. It's basically big play and a touchdown or bust. I was gonna go back to something we were talking about. Is not the cheaper, but the mid level, which a lot of people might skew away from. Is T Higgins is back in play because he's facing the Chiefs. He's not the concern from last week with the weather and all of those. Just make sure that the weather doesn't come into play again.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you on that. Let's we mentioned quickly tight end, but any slate that has Travis Kelce on it, he's going to end up being probably the highest owned tight end on this one. George Kittle looks like he's projecting to be the lowest owned of like this kind of trio at the top with Dallas Goedert in there as well. Hayden Hurst, I think just because he's so cheap, will grab a little bit of ownership as well. But Travis Kelce, top 4 in the Sims, even at that price point, 7,800 is probably another guy that we're going to continue to prioritize paying up for. I didn't have enough of them last week, Jake, at least enough of them without Mahomes. So it was my kind of downfall. But what are we doing with Kelce and the rest of these tight ends?
Finding a way to play him. And if you can't, I would just go to the other side of the ball with Hayden Hurst. My personal opinion, I would just avoid the Goddard and Kittle route. I know Kittle's been used a lot differently late in the season and been on the field a ton and like 2 touchdown games and Brock Purdy. But again, I go back to that. The Eagles matchup I don't love. If I'm going to go into this game, for the cost, I would go Kittle. And as you said, because he's going to be so low owned versus Goddard, going against the 49ers, like I want to stay against Goddard. If Hurts does his thing, especially in the passing game, I don't think it's going to be a lot of Goddard. So basically my pecking order would go, I'll just rank them. Kelce, Hurst, Kittle, Goddard would be how I would rank them this week.
Okay. I think that's probably the exact way that I would rank them. I wanted to do something a little bit different, but that was kind of what I came up with as well.
Tight end feels easy this week.
It does, yeah. It's one of
which means we're going to get a Noah Gray touchdown.
Oh, God. Yeah, I think I had a little bit of Noah Gray on some of my MME last week just for like hoping to have that like Stoneman tight end. I think he caught a nice like 30-yard pass, something like that. So it wasn't a complete zero, which is nice. Defense, we don't normally talk about defense, but let's touch on it quickly. Yeah, I mean Bengals, I think they're 2,300, so they're the cheapest by far. I think the Eagles at 2,800 for just a little bit more are going to be the chalk. But those are the two that I'm kind of looking at. So this is the point of the show where it's kind of our gentleman's agreement. If you've been watching us all year, this would be the time where you can help us out by hitting that subscribe button, trying to get to 20K by the Super Bowl. We're running out of time, Jake. So the people that are watching this, the 50% of the people that are watching this that aren't subscribed, which I can see on the back end, this would be the time to hit that button. We can hit that bonus of, or not that bonus. Well, yeah, maybe we'll do something cool if we hit it. But 20K subs, we're almost there. Anything else, Jake, before we jump into this lineup build? 2-game slates, obviously, a lot can go wrong, so we might have to get a little bit weird on this one.
It might be. I'm kind of trying to get ahead of you to semi-build a little bit to see. I don't think a McCaffrey Kelce stack is gonna, like, I just don't feel like you're gonna be able to make a team out of that, and it's looking like
it's difficult.
Not unless you got to take 3 flyers, and that's a little tough.
Well, let's start with quarterback. Do you have a guy that you're kind of prioritizing there on the starting point?
I mean, I would love to go Hurts. Mm-hmm. I mean, so let's go with Hurts. Let's do Hurts, McCaffrey, Pacheco, and let's kind of see.
And then should we put Cincy D in?
Yeah,
it's the cheapest D to start with. But we can always move up if we need to. So 5,400 the rest of the way. Yeah, it's not easy to get Kelce in there unless we really love some of these cheaper wide receivers. So you did mention Tony. That would probably help out salary-wise a little bit, unless you want to go in a different direction on the savings.
Yeah, I definitely want to get Tony in there, especially if I'm going to bring in Chase and possibly Higgins.
Yep.
So
Chase feels like one of the main priorities to me this week. Do you feel differently?
No, I 100% agree. Like, if you can find a way to get him in there.
Okay.
I'm trying to piece this together at the same time as yours. Do you have Chase in there?
I have Chase in there.
Man,
I think that the decision point becomes, do we want to just play Dallas Goedert instead of Kelce, or do we want to try and get up to Devonta?
I don't want to play Dallas Goedert.
Okay.
I would throw a Hayden Hurst in there if I was going to do that.
Yeah. So do you have preference if you had all the salary in the world, AJ Brown versus Devonta Smith?
It would be Devonta Smith, but oh man, I'm in a different spot than you. If you play the double tight end, Kelce, Hurst, I fall 200 short with Debo, Chase, and Tony.
Oh wow,
this is a tough. I know this is a tough build here.
Yeah, that would have been really nice. That would have fit together perfectly.
Wouldn't it be nice? They knew that. They knew that's where I was headed.
Yep. Well,
so what do you get? AJ Brown. I mean, that's so.
We
Are you at
can't.
the
We
same
can't
spot
get
I
in.
am?
I don't think we'll be able to get in Kelsey this build if we do AJ Brown. But
No, but you can get. You can. So what you can do here? I got you. I'm beating you to the
I
punch.
got
here.
it. I know exactly.
You're actually headed in the right direction. That's where I'm going. Debo, there you go. And then you can put the Eagles on. Look, you
Oh,
got
okay.
it. You figured out what I was gonna do. No, take out Hurts for you. Don't play. I wasn't gonna play Hurts with this stack because I had Chase and
we'll get Chase and Burrow in there. So now we can get to Eagles D.
Just only AJ Brown. Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Easy game.